In this video, I'm looking at 4 more properties in the Greenbelt. As usual, I'm checking out decisions made by planning appeal inspectors. In every case, the household is appealing against a condition applied by the council that removed certain permitted development rights. In the first case, approval was granted for a replacement dwelling, subject to the removal of permitted development rights under classes A to E of Part 1 and Class A of Part 2. The council's justification for the condition was to prevent further massing on the site, which was not acceptable in the Greenbelt. The inspector pointed out that it was not sufficient for a site just to be in the Greenbelt to justify the removal of permitted development rights. The inspector observed that the site was protected by mature trees along the northeast boundary and by hedging along the frontage, to the extent that any extensions or outbuildings would have only a limited effect on the openness of the Greenbelt. The restrictive condition was judged neither reasonable or necessary, and the appeal was allowed. In this case, approval was granted for the conversion of stables to a dwelling house, subject to the removal of all permitted development rights. The council's reason for the condition was that the site was located within the Greenbelt, and the inspector once again pointed out that permitted development rights for dwellings in the Greenbelt are no different to those available outside of the Greenbelt, and that if greater control was desired, then the GPDO would reflect this. The condition needed to be site-specific and not just a blanket ban on all permitted development rights. The council also needed to justify the condition by providing evidence that the Greenbelt would be harmed. In this case, the condition was neither reasonable or necessary, and the appeal was allowed. This is a similar case, but with a different result. Approval was granted for the conversion of an outbuilding into a dwelling house, subject to the removal of all permitted development rights under classes A to E. The council considered that such permitted development would result in structures adversely impacting upon the openness of the Greenbelt. The inspector observed that the rural barn-like structure sat in expansive grounds but was modest in scale. The site was considerably open to public view from the main highway, and longer-range views were also possible through to the open fields beyond. It was the inspector's judgment that allowing permitted development rights had the potential for disproportionate additions within the extensive lawned gardens. This would harm the openness of the Greenbelt, as well as the character and appearance of the area. And the appeal was refused. It's interesting how the inspector deals with the planning practice guidance that states blanket removal of freedoms are unlikely to meet the tests of reasonableness and necessity. The inspector states the council applied condition 3 to remove permitted development rights within classes A to E1 inclusive. It does not extend beyond class E to include other types of domestic development. Consequently, it is not a full blanket restriction of permitted development rights. This was an appeal decided in October 2020. Let's look at an appeal decision that occurred 5 months earlier in June 2020, where a different inspector held a different view. He said, "The council has opted to impose a blanket Class A to Class E removal of permitted development rights, without clear justification for doing so from a character and appearance point of view. Such an approach is at odds with the PPG." So maybe the appeal wasn't such a clear refusal after all. If a blanket ban was considered to be an unreasonable condition, there's surely a case for the inspector to allow the appeal on some of the classes, if not all of them. This last case is a scout hut that had received permission for its demolition and replacement by a modest dwelling, slightly taller than the original structure, but with a smaller footprint. The approval applied a condition that withdrew permitted development rights for extensions and outbuildings. The council's reason for the condition was that further alterations could cause an unacceptable loss of openness to the greenbelt. The inspector observed that the site occupied an elevated and broadly open area. He reported that because of its elevation and its position, it was very prominent and readily visible from the road running through the village. Let's just check this. In this aerial photo we can see the scout hut. There are no public footpaths in the area. I've highlighted the road running through the village. We'll start on the right, go down the hill and turn right onto the main road. We'll pass the gate marking the road entrance to the scout hut. This is what we will see. Down the hill, no chance of seeing the hut. Onto the main road. We can just about see the hut roof over the hill. Gate entrance to the scout hut. No further sightings of the hut. From this evidence, does this suggest to you that the building is, in the inspector's words, very prominent and readily visible from the road running through the village? No, it doesn't to me either. The inspector's conclusion reads as follows. Given the site's prominent and generally exposed location, any structures would risk prejudicing the openness of the greenbelt. Consequently, the condition is reasonable and necessary for the protection of the greenbelt, and the appeal was dismissed. I'm not entirely convinced that the right decision was made there. I'd be interested to know what you think. That's it for this video. Please like or subscribe to support the channel. And next week I'm starting a new series, the topic to be decided very soon. Thanks for watching if you made it to the end, and see you next week.